The crystal chandelier above William Patterson's mahogany dining table caught the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows of his Denver mansion. At 68, the billionaire tech mogul had grown accustomed to dining alone in the vast room that could seat 24 guests. His daily routine rarely varied: lunch at precisely 1 o'clock, served by his trusted staff who had maintained his household for over a decade. Today felt different, though William could not pinpoint why. Perhaps it was the unusual silence from the kitchen, or the way his head of security, David Miller, kept glancing toward the service doors. William adjusted his necktie and reached for the silver fork beside his plate of herb-crusted salmon. The dining room doors burst open with such force that they slammed against the walls. A young girl with shoulder-length brown hair and wearing a bright red school uniform raced across the Persian rug, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. "Don't eat that," 12-year-old Katie Brooks shouted, her voice echoing through the cavernous room. Before William could react, Katie's small hands swept across the table, sending the carefully plated meal crashing to the marble floor. The delicate china shattered into dozens of pieces, salmon and vegetables scattering across the expensive rug. William's mouth fell open in shock. In all his years of business dealings, hostile takeovers, and corporate warfare, nothing had prepared him for this moment. A child had just destroyed his lunch and was now standing before him, breathing heavily, her green eyes blazing with determination. "Katie." Carol Brooks appeared in the doorway, her face pale with horror. The head maid had worked for the Patterson family for 8 years, and her daughter had never set foot in the main house without permission. "What have you done?" David Miller stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving toward his radio. "Sir, should I call security?" William held up his hand, his eyes never leaving the young girl who stood defiantly before him. Something in her expression stopped him from reacting with anger. Where he expected to see mischief or rebellion, he saw fear mixed with fierce determination. "Katie, apologize to Mr. Patterson immediately," Carol said, wringing her hands in her starched white apron. She had raised a daughter to be respectful and well-behaved, especially around her employer. This behavior was completely unlike Katie. But Katie did not apologize. Instead, she looked directly at William with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You can't eat that food, Mr. Patterson. He put something in it." "What are you talking about, child?" William's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Chef Vincent," Katie said, her voice growing stronger. "I heard him on the phone in the kitchen. He was talking to someone about putting something in your food to make you sick. Really sick." Carol's face went from embarrassment to confusion. "Katie, that's impossible. Vincent has worked here for 3 years." David Miller stepped closer, his professional instincts taking over. "What exactly did you hear, Katie?" The young girl took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I came home early from school because I forgot my science project in Mom's room downstairs. I was walking past the kitchen when I heard Chef Vincent talking on his phone. He said, 'The powder is already mixed in. He'll never taste it with all those herbs.' Then he said something about Mr. Patterson being in the hospital by tonight, and how someone named Marcus would be very happy." William felt a chill run down his spine. Marcus Sterling was his business partner and the only person who would benefit from William's sudden illness or death. They had been having disagreements about the direction of their company, and Marcus had been pushing for control. "This is ridiculous," William said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Vincent wouldn't." "Sir," David interrupted, "we should investigate this immediately." Carol looked between her daughter and her employer, uncertainty written across her features. "Katie has never lied to me, Mr. Patterson. But this seems so impossible." Katie finished. "That's what I thought too. But I heard what I heard, and I couldn't let you eat that food." William studied the girl's face. There was no hint of deception, no fidgeting or looking away that might suggest she was making up the story. If anything, she seemed more mature than her 12 years, as if the weight of what she had witnessed had forced her to grow up in an instant. "Where is Vincent now?" David asked. "He left through the back door right after he served the meal," Katie replied. "He seemed nervous and kept checking his watch." William's mind raced. Vincent had indeed seemed different lately, more secretive and less engaged with his work. There had been small things, Phone calls that stopped when William entered the kitchen, nervous glances, and an overall change in demeanor that William had attributed to personal stress. "David, I want you to call the police immediately," William said, his voice steady despite the chaos of the moment. "Have them test every piece of that food." As David reached for his radio, William looked down at Katie Brooks. This child, the daughter of his maid, had just put herself at risk to save his life. She had acted on instinct and courage, without thought for consequences or personal gain. "Katie," he said gently, "if what you're saying is true, you just saved my life." The young girl's bravado began to crack, and for the first time, she looked like the child she was. "I was scared you wouldn't believe me. I was scared I was wrong. But I couldn't just let something bad happen to you." Carol moved closer to her daughter, placing a protective hand on Katie's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mr. Patterson. Even if she's right about what she heard, she should have told me or Mr. Miller instead of boasting in here like this." "No," William said firmly. "She did exactly the right thing. If someone had poisoned my food, every second counted." The sound of sirens grew closer, and David spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating with the police and paramedics. William continued to stare at the broken china on his dining room floor, realizing that the shattered pieces might represent the moment his life was saved by an act of pure, unexpected kindness. But could this be real? Could someone have actually tried to poison him? And if so, what did this mean for everything he thought he knew about the people in his life? Have you ever witnessed a moment of courage that changed everything? What would you do if you overheard something that could save someone's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to hear how this incredible story unfolds. Within 30 minutes, William's dining room had transformed into a crime scene. Detective Jennifer Walsh, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, supervised as forensic specialists carefully collected samples of the scattered food. William watched from the doorway, still trying to process what had happened. Katie sat in the living room with her mother, answering questions from a kind police officer who specialized in interviewing children. Her initial bravery had given way to nervousness as the reality of the situation sank in. "Mr. Patterson," Detective Walsh approached him with a serious expression. "We found traces of oleander extract in the salmon. It's a highly toxic substance that would have caused severe heart problems within hours. Without immediate medical intervention, it could have been fatal." William felt his legs weaken. He sank into his leather armchair, the weight of Katie's actions hitting him fully. "She actually saved my life." "That little girl is a hero," the detective confirmed. "We've issued an alert for Vincent Garcia. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" "I know he has a sister in Colorado Springs," William replied, his mind still reeling. "David has his personnel file." Detective Walsh nodded and walked away to coordinate the search. William looked across the room where Katie was finishing her statement with the police officer. The young girl caught his eye and offered a small, uncertain smile. "Katie," William called softly, "would you come here, please?" Katie approached hesitantly, with Carol close behind. William had never really looked at the girl before today. She was small for 12, with intelligent eyes and her mother's gentle features. Her school uniform was rumpled from the day's excitement, but she carried herself with surprising dignity. "I owe you an apology," William said, his voice thick with emotion, "and a debt I can never repay." "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Patterson," Katie replied. "I just did what anyone would do." William shook his head. "No, Katie. What you did took tremendous courage. Most adults wouldn't have acted so quickly or decisively." David Miller approached with his phone in hand. "Sir, I have news. The police found Vincent at the bus station trying to board a Greyhound to Phoenix. He confessed immediately when they arrested him." "Confessed to what?" Carol asked, still struggling to believe her daughter's story was true. "Vincent admitted someone paid him $50,000 to poison Mr. Patterson," David explained. "He claims he needed the money for his mother's cancer treatments, but he won't say who hired him yet." William closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of sadness and betrayal. He had trusted Vincent, had even given him bonuses and time off when needed. The idea that financial desperation could drive someone to attempted murder was deeply troubling. "There's more," David continued. "Vincent says this person threatened his family if he didn't go through with it. He agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. Detective Walsh rejoined the group. Mr. Patterson, we'll need you to think carefully about anyone who might benefit from your death or incapacitation. Business rivals, disgruntled employees, family members with inheritance expectations. William's mind immediately went to Marcus Sterling, but he hesitated to voice his suspicions without proof. I'll prepare a list for you, he said instead. As the police finished their work and began to leave, William found himself alone with Katie and Carol in his living room. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting everything in a golden glow that seemed inappropriate for such a dark day. Mrs. Brooks, William said to Carol, I hope you understand that none of this reflects on you or your position here. You've been nothing but loyal and trustworthy. Carol's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. I was so worried about what this might mean for our jobs. William was struck by her words. Here was a woman whose daughter had just saved his life, and she was worried about employment security. It made him realize how little he knew about the people who worked in his home every day. Katie, he said, turning to the young girl, tell me about yourself. What do you like to study in school? Katie seemed surprised by the question. I like science and math, and I want to be a doctor someday. A doctor, William repeated thoughtfully. That's a noble profession. It requires intelligence, dedication, and courage. You've already demonstrated all three of those qualities today. I'm not that smart, Katie said modestly. I just pay attention to things. Paying attention is one of the most important skills anyone can have, William replied. It's what saved my life today. Carol shifted uncomfortably. Katie, we should let Mr. Patterson rest. This has been a difficult day for everyone. But William held up his hand. Please, stay a moment longer. I want to ask you both something important. He looked at Carol, really seeing her for the first time in years. She was probably in her early 40s, with premature gray streaking her brown hair. There were lines of worry around her eyes and a tiredness that spoke of long days and sleepless nights. Mrs. Brooks, may I ask about Katie's father? Carol's expression tightened slightly. He died in a car accident when Katie was 5. It's been just the two of us since then. William felt a pang of guilt. This woman had been working in his house for 8 years, and he had never bothered to learn this basic fact about her life. He had treated her as part of the furniture, efficient and invisible. I'm sorry for your loss, he said quietly. It must have been difficult raising Katie alone. We manage, Carol replied, but William could hear the strain in her voice. Katie looked between the adults, sensing undercurrents she didn't fully understand. Mom works really hard, she said loyally. She takes care of this whole house and still helps me with my homework every night. The simple statement hit William like a physical blow. While he had been living in luxury, the woman who maintained his home had been struggling to raise her daughter alone, probably on a salary that barely covered their basic needs. Katie, what school do you attend? William asked. Denver Public School 4-7, Katie replied. It's okay, but some of the kids are mean, and the science lab doesn't have very good equipment. William made a mental note. And what do you want to study when you become a doctor? Katie's eyes lit up. Pediatric oncology. I want to help kids with cancer get better. The specificity of her answer surprised William. That's very specific. What made you choose that specialty? Katie glanced at her mother before answering. My friend Tommy's little sister had leukemia. The doctors at Children's Hospital were so kind and worked so hard to help her. They couldn't save her, but they made sure she wasn't scared, and they helped Tommy's family through everything. I want to be like them. William felt something shift in his chest. This young girl, who had just saved his life, had already chosen to dedicate her future to saving others. She possessed a compassion and sense of purpose that many adults never developed. Katie, he said solemnly, I want you to know that what you did today will never be forgotten. You showed courage, quick thinking, and genuine concern for another person's welfare. These are qualities that will serve you well in any career, but especially in medicine. As the day wound toward evening, William stood at his dining room window watching Katie and Carol walk toward the small apartment above the garage where they lived. The events of the afternoon felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than his carefully ordered life. But the evidence was undeniable. A 12-year-old girl had saved his life through an act of pure, selfless courage. And in doing so, she had opened his eyes to a world of need and opportunity that had been right under his nose for years. Tomorrow, he decided, things were going to change. 2 days after the poisoning attempt, William sat in Detective Walsh's office at the Denver Police Department, staring at a stack of documents that painted a disturbing picture of betrayal and greed. Your business partner, Marcus Sterling, has been under federal investigation for embezzlement for 6 months, Detective Walsh explained, spreading financial records across a desk. Vincent Garcia's confession led us directly to him. William studied the papers, seeing his company's financial irregularities laid out in black and white. I trusted Marcus completely. We built Patterson Sterling Technologies together over 15 years. According to Vincent, Sterling promised him $100,000 total, with $50,000 upfront and the rest after your death, the detective continued. Sterling needed you out of the way because you were getting too close to discovering the missing funds. The betrayal cut deeper than William had expected. Marcus had been more than a business partner. He had been like a brother. They had started their tech company in William's garage, working 18-hour days and dreaming of changing the world. How much money are we talking about? William asked. Preliminary estimates suggest Sterling has embezzled over $12 million over the past 3 years, Detective Walsh replied. He's been very clever about it, moving money through shell companies and offshore accounts. William's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from David Miller. Katie and Carol are here to see you. Should I bring them up? William looked at Detective Walsh, who nodded. The girl's testimony will be crucial to the prosecution. She might as well hear this directly. A few minutes later, Katie and Carol entered the office. Katie wore a bright blue dress that William had never seen before, and Carol had styled her hair differently. They both looked nervous but determined. Katie, Detective Walsh said kindly, thank you for coming. Your bravery has helped us solve a much bigger crime than we initially realized. Katie sat up straighter in her chair. What do you mean? The man who paid Chef Vincent to hurt Mr. Patterson has been stealing money from Mr. Patterson's company for years, the detective explained. Because you spoke up, we were able to catch him before he could steal any more or hurt anyone else. William watched Katie process this information. Her young face showed a mixture of shock and satisfaction at having helped bring a criminal to justice. Will Chef Vincent go to jail? Katie asked. Yes, but probably not for as long as he might have, Detective Walsh replied. Because he cooperated with us and helped catch the real villain, the judge will likely be more lenient with his sentence. Carol spoke up for the first time. What happens now? Marcus Sterling was arrested this morning, William said. The FBI raided his house and found evidence of the embezzlement scheme. Vincent's testimony, combined with Katie's witness account, gives us a solid case. Katie looked thoughtful. I'm glad no one else got hurt. But I feel bad for Chef Vincent's mother. He said he needed money for her cancer treatments. William felt a familiar pang in his chest. Even after everything that had happened, Katie's first concern was for the suffering of others. You're right to think about her, Katie. I've actually been thinking about that situation myself. Detective Walsh gathered the papers on her desk. There's something else you should know. The FBI investigation has recovered most of the stolen money. It was sitting in accounts that Sterling couldn't access without triggering federal monitoring systems. William felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The money could be recovered, but the damage to relationships and trust would take much longer to heal. As they prepared to leave the police station, Katie tugged on William's sleeve. Mr. Patterson, can I ask you something? Of course, Katie. Are you going to be okay? I mean, with your company and everything. William knelt down to Katie's eye level, something he had never done with a child before. Katie, because of your courage, I'm going to be better than okay. You didn't just save my life, you saved my company and probably prevented Marcus from hurting other people. On the drive back to the house, Carol sat in the front seat of William's car, while Katie pressed her face to the window in the back, watching Denver pass by. Mrs. Brooks, William said carefully, may I ask you a personal question? Carol tensed slightly. Yes, sir. Are you happy working for me? The question seemed to surprise her. You've been a good employer, Mr. Patterson. You pay fairly and treat the staff with respect. William noted that she hadn't actually answered his question. What I mean is, are you happy with your life? With Katie's opportunities? With your own future? Carol was quiet for a long moment. Happiness is a luxury I haven't been able to afford to think about much, she said finally. I've been focused on survival and making sure Katie has what she needs. And does she have what she needs? Another pause. She's healthy, she's safe, and she's getting an education. That's more than a lot of children have. William glanced in the rearview mirror at Katie, who was now reading a book she had pulled from her backpack. What about her dreams of becoming a doctor? Carol's voice became strained. Dreams are wonderful, Mr. Patterson, but they require resources we don't have. Medical school costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Katie is smart, but smart isn't always enough. They drove the rest of the way, in thoughtful silence. When they arrived at the house, William made a decision that would change all of their lives. Mrs. Brooks, Katie, would you please join me in the library? There's something I want to discuss with both of you. The library was William's favorite room in the house, lined floor to ceiling with books and filled with comfortable chairs and warm lighting. He gestured for Katie and Carol to sit on the leather sofa while he took the chair across from them. I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past 2 days, William began. About loyalty, about courage, and about what really matters in life. Katie looked at her mother, who was sitting very still, as if bracing for bad news. Katie, you saved my life. But more than that, you showed me that there are people in this world who act selflessly, without expecting anything in return. You put yourself at risk to help someone else, and you did it because it was the right thing to do. William stood and walked to his desk, retrieving a folder he had prepared earlier that day. I want to make you both an offer, he continued, and I hope you'll consider it carefully before giving me an answer. He handed the folder to Carol, who opened it with trembling hands. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, and a letter written in William's careful handwriting. I'm offering to pay for Katie's education, from now through medical school, William said. All of it. Tuition, books, room and board, everything. Carol's eyes widened, and Katie leaned over to look at the papers. But there's more, William continued. I'm also offering you, Mrs. Brooks, a position as my household manager, with a substantial increase in salary and benefits. And I want to pay off your current debts, including any medical bills or other financial obligations you might have. Carol stared at the documents, tears forming in her eyes. Mr. Patterson, this is too much. I can't accept this. But Katie looked up at him with shining eyes. Mom, he's trying to help us. We should say yes. William smiled at Katie's directness. Your daughter is wise, Mrs. Brooks. This isn't charity. It's an investment in people who have proven their worth through their actions. What would you do if someone offered to change your family's entire future? Sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. If this story is touching your heart, please subscribe and let us know in the comments what acts of kindness have changed your life. Carol Brooks stared at the legal documents spread across William Patterson's mahogany desk, her hands shaking as she read the numbers. The offer was so generous it seemed impossible, almost frightening in its scope. Mr. Patterson, Carol said, her voice barely above a whisper, this says you want to establish a trust fund with $2 million for Katie's education. That should cover undergraduate studies at a top university, medical school, and residency expenses with some left over for emergencies, William replied matter-of-factly, as if he were discussing the weather. Katie bounced slightly in her chair, her 12-year-old mind struggling to comprehend such large numbers. Mom, that means I can really become a doctor, doesn't it? William smiled at Katie's enthusiasm. It means you'll have every opportunity to become whatever you want to be, as long as you're willing to work hard for it. Carol set the papers down and looked directly at William. Why are you doing this? I mean, I understand wanting to thank Katie for what she did, but this is life-changing money. William was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Mrs. Brooks, I've spent most of my adult life focused on making money and building companies. I've been successful by most measures, but I've also been lonely and disconnected from the people around me. Your daughter showed me what real courage looks like, and she did it without expecting anything in return. He walked to the window overlooking his perfectly manicured grounds. I've been thinking about legacy lately. When I die, what will I leave behind? A successful company? A large bank account? Those things don't matter if I haven't made a positive difference in people's lives. Carol wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You don't understand, Mr. Patterson. I have $30,000 in medical debt from when Katie had pneumonia 2 years ago. I've been paying $50 a month because that's all I can afford. At that rate, it will take me 50 years to pay it off. Not anymore, William said gently. That's all taken care of. And there's something else. He handed Carol another document. I'm increasing your salary to $80,000 per year, plus health insurance for both of you, and a pension plan. Katie looked between the adults, sensing the enormous significance of the moment, but not fully understanding the financial details. Does this mean we don't have to worry about money anymore? Carol pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. It means we're going to be okay, sweetheart. More than okay. David Miller knocked on the library door and entered when William called for him to come in. So, I have some news about the Sterling case. Please, share it with all of us, William said. Katie and Mrs. Brooks are part of this family now. David's expression softened at William's words. The FBI has recovered nearly all of the stolen funds. Marcus Sterling has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. He is also providing information about several other white-collar crimes. Katie perked up. Does this mean other bad people will get caught? Probably, David replied. Sometimes when one person decides to tell the truth, it helps solve lots of different problems. William felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Katie's moment of courage was creating ripples of justice and positive change that extended far beyond his dining room. There's something else I want to discuss, William continued, turning back to Carol and Katie. I've been thinking about starting a foundation to help other families in situations similar to yours. Carol looked up from the documents she was still processing. What kind of foundation? A scholarship and support program for children of service workers, William explained. Kids whose parents work as housekeepers, maintenance staff, security guards, food service workers. These families work hard but often struggle to provide their children with the same opportunities available to wealthier families. Katie's eyes lit up. You mean help other kids like me? Exactly like you, William confirmed. Smart, hard-working kids who just need someone to believe in them and provide opportunities. Over the following days, word of William's extraordinary generosity began to spread through Denver's tight-knit community of domestic workers. Carol had always been well-liked among the housekeepers, nannies, and maintenance staff who worked in the wealthy neighborhoods around the city, and news of her family's changed circumstances inspired both joy and hope. Maria Gonzalez, who worked as a housekeeper for a family in Cherry Hills Village, called Carol with tears in her voice. Is it true? Did Mr. Patterson really pay for Katie's entire education? It's true, Carol replied, still hardly believing it herself. And he's starting a foundation to help other families too. Within a week, William's phone was ringing constantly with calls from other wealthy Denver residents who had heard about his actions. Some were skeptical, wondering about his motives. But others were inspired and wanted to know how they could help. James Harrison, who owned a chain of successful restaurants, visited William's house on a Thursday afternoon. I heard what you did for your Maid's family, James said. I want to do something similar for my employees. It's not about the money, William explained as they sat in his living room. It's about recognizing the humanity and potential in the people who work around us every day. James nodded thoughtfully. I have a dishwasher whose son is incredibly talented at math. The kid helps other students with their homework, but his family can't afford to send him to college. Bring them to meet me, William suggested. Let's see what we can do. By the end of the month, 6 other Denver business owners had committed to creating similar scholarship programs for their employees' children. The local news picked up the story, dubbing it the Katie Brooks effect after the young girl whose courage had started it all. Katie, meanwhile, was adjusting to her new circumstances with remarkable grace. William had enrolled her at Denver Academy, one of the city's most prestigious private schools, but Katie insisted on staying in touch with her friends from her old school. "They are still my friends," Katie explained to William one afternoon as they sat in his library. "Just because I go to a different school now doesn't mean I'm better than them." William smiled at her wisdom. "You're absolutely right, Katie. True friends support each other no matter what changes in their lives." Katie had also become something of a celebrity at her new school, not because of her family's changed circumstances, but because of the story of her courage in saving William's life. Other students looked up to her, and she used her newfound influence to start a community service club. "We should do something to help other kids," Katie told her new classmates during their first club meeting. "Not everyone is as lucky as we are." The club's first project was organizing a supply drive for Katie's old school, collecting books, art supplies, and science equipment that the public school desperately needed. Carol, for her part, was thriving in her new role as household manager. William had given her authority to oversee all aspects of his domestic staff and household operations, and she approached the job with the same dedication she had always shown, but now with the security and resources to do it properly. "You know what the best part is," Carol told David Miller one evening as they talked in the kitchen. The security chief had become a good friend to both Carol and Katie, often joining them for dinner in their apartment above the garage. "What's that?" David asked. "For the first time since my husband died, I'm not afraid," Carol said. "I'm not afraid of getting sick and not being able to afford treatment. I'm not afraid of Katie not having opportunities. I'm not afraid of the future." David looked at her thoughtfully. "You know, fear changes people. Living without it can be transformative." As autumn settled over Denver, the changes in the Patterson household were evident too. He handed Carol another document. "I'm increasing your salary to $80,000 per year, plus health insurance for both of you, and a pension plan." Katie looked between the adults, sensing the enormous significance of the moment, but not fully understanding the financial details. "Does this mean we don't have to worry about money anymore?" Carol pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. "It means we're going to be okay, sweetheart. More than okay." David Miller knocked on the library door and entered when William called for him to come in. "So, I have some news about the Sterling case." "Please, share it with all of us," William said. "Katie and Mrs. Brooks are part of this family now." David's expression softened at William's words. "The FBI has recovered nearly all of the stolen funds. Marcus Sterling has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's also providing information about several other white-collar crimes." Katie perked up. "Does this mean other bad people will get caught?" "Probably," David replied. "Sometimes when one person decides to tell the truth, it helps solve lots of different problems." William felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Katie's moment of courage was creating ripples of justice and positive change that extended far beyond his dining room. "There's something else I want to discuss," William continued, turning back to Carol and Katie. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation to help other families in situations similar to yours." Carol looked up from the documents she was still processing. "What kind of foundation?" "A scholarship and support program for children of service workers," William explained. "Kids whose parents work as housekeepers, maintenance staff, security guards, food service workers. These families work hard but often struggle to provide their children with the same opportunities available to wealthier families." Katie's eyes lit up. "You mean help other kids like me?" "Exactly like you," William confirmed. "Smart, hard-working kids who just need someone to believe in them and provide opportunities." Over the following days, word of William's extraordinary generosity began to spread through Denver's tight-knit community of domestic workers. Carol had always been well-liked among the housekeepers, nannies, and maintenance staff who worked in the wealthy neighborhoods around the city, and news of her family's changed circumstances inspired both joy and hope. Maria Gonzalez, who worked as a housekeeper for a family in Cherry Hills Village, called Carol with tears in her voice. "Is it true? Did Mr. Patterson really pay for Katie's entire education?" "It's true," Carol replied, still hardly believing it herself. "And he's starting a foundation to help other families too." Within a week, William's phone was ringing constantly with calls from other wealthy Denver residents who had heard about his actions. Some were skeptical, wondering about his motives. But others were inspired and wanted to know how they could help. James Harrison, who owned a chain of successful restaurants, visited William's house on a Thursday afternoon. "I heard what you did for your maid's family," James said. "I want to do something similar for my employees." "It's not about the money," William explained as they sat in his living room. "It's about recognizing the humanity and potential in the people who work around us every day." James nodded thoughtfully. "I have a dishwasher whose son is incredibly talented at math. The kid helps other students with their homework, but his family can't afford to send him to college. Bring them to meet me," William suggested. "Let's see what we can do." By the end of the month, 6 other Denver business owners had committed to creating similar scholarship programs for their employees' children. The local news picked up the story, dubbing it the Katie Brooks effect after the young girl whose courage had started it all. Katie, meanwhile, was adjusting to her new circumstances with remarkable grace. William had enrolled her at Denver Academy, one of the city's most prestigious private schools, but Katie insisted on staying in touch with her friends from her old school. "They are still my friends," Katie explained to William one afternoon as they sat in his library. "Just because I go to a different school now doesn't mean I'm better than them." William smiled at her wisdom. "You're absolutely right, Katie. True friends support each other no matter what changes in their lives." Katie had also become something of a celebrity at her new school, not because of her family's changed circumstances, but because of the story of her courage in saving William's life. Other students looked up to her, and she used her newfound influence to start a community service club. "We should do something to help other kids," Katie told her new classmates during their first club meeting. "Not everyone is as lucky as we are." The club's first project was organizing a supply drive for Katie's old school, collecting books, art supplies, and science equipment that the public school desperately needed. Carol, for her part, was thriving in her new role as household manager. William had given her authority to oversee all aspects of his domestic staff and household operations, and she approached the job with the same dedication she had always shown, but now with the security and resources to do it properly. "You know what the best part is," Carol told David Miller one evening as they talked in the kitchen. The security chief had become a good friend to both Carol and Katie, often joining them for dinner in their apartment above the garage. "What's that?" David asked. "For the first time since my husband died, I'm not afraid," Carol said. "I'm not afraid of getting sick and not being able to afford treatment. I'm not afraid of Katie not having opportunities. I'm not afraid of the future." David looked at her thoughtfully. "You know, fear changes people. Living without it can be transformative." As autumn settled over Denver, the changes in the Patterson household were evident to everyone. There was laughter in the halls, genuine conversation at meals, and a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. William found himself looking forward to each day in a way he hadn't experienced since he was young. Katie would often visit him in his study after school, telling him about her classes and asking questions about his business. "Mr. Patterson," Katie said one October afternoon, "do you think other rich people would help more kids if they knew how good it feels?" William considered her question carefully. "I think many wealthy people want to help, but they don't always know how to do it in a way that really makes a difference." Katie nodded sagely. "Maybe we should show them." And with those simple words, Katie Brooks, the maid's daughter who had saved a billionaire's life, planted the seed for what would become one of Denver's most successful philanthropic movements. 6 months after the poisoning attempt, Denver Academy's Spring Science Fair buzzed with energy as students presented their projects to judges, parents, and fellow classmates. Katie Brooks stood confidently beside her display on the effects of heavy metal contamination in urban soil, fielding questions from impressed visitors. "This is remarkable work for a 7th grader," said Dr. Patricia Chen, a judge from the University of Colorado Medical School. "Have you considered submitting this to the state science competition?" Katie beamed with pride. "My mentor, Dr. Rodriguez from Children's Hospital, suggested the same thing. We're going to expand the research this summer." William Patterson watched from across the gymnasium, his heart swelling with pride. The shy, desperate girl who had burst into his dining room 6 months ago had blossomed into a confident young scientist with a clear sense of purpose. "She's amazing," said Rebecca Harrison, James Harrison's wife. The Harrisons had become close friends with William since starting their own employee scholarship program. Hard to believe she's only 13 now. The transformation has been incredible, William agreed. But the remarkable thing is, her core character hasn't changed at all. She's still the same compassionate, courageous girl who saved my life. Across the fair, Katie was explaining her research methodology to a group of interested parents when she spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Vincent Garcia, the former chef who had tried to poison William, stood near the entrance looking nervous and uncertain. Katie excused herself from the conversation and walked over to Vincent, who seemed surprised to see her approaching. "Hello, Mr. Garcia," Katie said politely. Vincent looked uncomfortable. "Katie, I didn't expect to see you here. I came because Mr. Patterson invited me, but maybe I shouldn't have." "Why did Mr. Patterson invite you?" Katie asked with genuine curiosity rather than hostility. "He's been helping with my mother's medical bills," Vincent replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Even after what I did to him, he made sure she got the cancer treatment she needed." Katie nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. "That sounds like him. How is your mother doing?" "She's in remission," Vincent said, wiping his eyes. "The doctors say she has a good chance of beating it completely." "I'm glad," Katie said sincerely. "I know you were scared about her getting sick. Fear makes people do things they wouldn't normally do." Vincent stared at the young girl in amazement. "Katie, I tried to hurt someone you care about. I could have killed him. Aren't you angry with me?" Katie considered the question carefully. "I was angry at first. But Mr. Patterson explained to me that you were desperate and someone took advantage of that desperation. The real villain was the person who paid you to do it." "You're remarkably wise for someone your age," Vincent said. "My mom always tells me that holding on to anger hurts you more than it hurts the person you're angry at," Katie replied. "Besides, you're getting help now, and your mother is getting better. That's what matters." William had been watching the conversation from a distance, ready to intervene if necessary. But as he observed Katie's natural compassion and maturity, he decided to stay back and let her handle the situation her own way. David Miller approached William, carrying 2 cups of punch from the refreshment table. "I still can't believe you invited Vincent to the science fair." "He needed to see what his actions could have prevented," William replied. "Katie's success, the scholarship program, all the good that has come from that terrible day. I wanted him to understand the full scope of what he almost destroyed." "And his mother's treatment?" David asked. "Cancer doesn't discriminate based on the mistakes people make," William said simply. "She's an innocent victim in all of this. Helping her was the right thing to do." The trial of Marcus Sterling had concluded 2 months earlier. William's former business partner received a 10-year prison sentence for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit murder. The lengthy sentence reflected not only the severity of his crimes, but also the additional financial crimes the FBI had uncovered during their investigation. Vincent had received a much lighter sentence of 18 months in minimum security prison, most of which he had already served while awaiting trial. His cooperation with authorities and the clear evidence of coercion had convinced the judge to show leniency. "Mr. Patterson," Katie appeared at his side, having finished her conversation with Vincent. "The judges are about to announce the winners." They gathered with the other families as the school's principal took the microphone. Katie had won first place in the life sciences category, earning her a spot in the state competition and a $500 scholarship. As they drove home from the science fair, Katie sat in the back seat clutching her trophy and talking excitedly about her plans for the state competition. "I want to expand the research to include testing methods that other kids could use in their own communities," she said. "Dr. Rodriguez thinks we might be able to develop a simple test kit that high schools could use to monitor soil contamination around their schools." Carol, who had been quiet during the drive, finally spoke up. "Katie, do you ever miss your old life? Before all this happened?" Katie thought for a moment. "I miss some of my old friends, but I still see them regularly. And I like that we don't have to worry about money anymore. But you know what I like best about our new life?" "What's that, sweetheart?" Carol asked. "We get to help other people now," Katie replied. Before, we were always the ones who needed help. Now we can be the ones giving help, and that feels really good." William felt his throat tighten with emotion. This young girl continued to surprise him with her wisdom and generosity of spirit. The Pattison Foundation, as it had come to be known, had grown rapidly in the months since its founding. With contributions from William and other Denver business leaders, the foundation now provided scholarships and support to 47 children from working-class families. Katie had become something of an unofficial ambassador for the foundation, speaking at fundraising events and sharing her story with potential donors. Her natural charisma and genuine passion for helping others had proven remarkably effective at opening both hearts and wallets. "There's something I want to discuss with all of you," William said as they pulled into his driveway. "The foundation board has asked me to consider expanding the program statewide." "That's wonderful," Carol said. "But it would be a huge undertaking." "It would," William agreed. "Which is why I want to ask Katie if she would be willing to serve as our youth advisor. The position would involve traveling around Colorado, meeting with families, and helping to identify students who would benefit from the program." Katie's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? You want me to help choose which kids get scholarships?" "I want you to help us make sure we're reaching the kids who need it most," William clarified. "Your perspective as someone who has been in their situation is invaluable." As they entered the house, William reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely, isolated billionaire focused primarily on business success. Now, his days were filled with meaningful relationships and purposeful work that extended far beyond profit margins. The investigation into Marcus Sterling's crimes had also led to a thorough review of Pattison Technologies' operations. The company was stronger than ever, with new leadership and a renewed focus on ethical business practices. William had also implemented profit-sharing programs and educational benefits for all employees, inspired by Katie's example of caring for others. That evening, as had become their custom, Katie joined William in his study after dinner. She was working on a thank you letter to Dr. Rodriguez for mentoring her science fair project, while William reviewed applications for the Foundation's summer internship program. "Mr. Pattison," Katie said, looking up from her letter, "do you think people can really change? I mean, completely change who they are?" William considered the question carefully. "I think people can change their circumstances and their behaviors, but their core character usually stays the same." "Why do you ask?" "I was thinking about Mr. Garcia today," Katie said. "He seemed so different from the scared man who tried to hurt you. More peaceful, I guess. Vincent is learning to live without the fear and desperation that drove him to make bad choices," William explained. "That's not really changing who he is fundamentally. It's allowing his better nature to show through." Katie nodded thoughtfully. "What about you? Do you think you've changed?" William smiled at her directness. "I think I've learned to see what was always there, but I had forgotten how to look for it." "What do you mean?" "The goodness in people. The potential for kindness and courage that exists in everyone. You reminded me that those things matter more than money or business success." Katie returned to her letter, but William could see her processing his words. At 13, she was already demonstrating wisdom and emotional intelligence that many adults never developed. As the months passed, the Katie Brooks effect continued to spread throughout Denver and beyond. Local newspapers regularly featured stories about the scholarship recipients and their achievements. A documentary crew had even approached William about filming a feature about the foundation, though he had declined, preferring to keep the focus on the students rather than on himself. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in William himself. The man who had once eaten alone in his vast dining room now hosted weekly dinners for foundation families, creating a community of support and friendship that enriched all their lives. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest waves of change. How has someone's bravery changed your life? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to see how Katie's journey continues to inspire others. On a crisp November morning, William Pattison stood in his kitchen making pancakes while Katie Brooks sat at the island doing homework and chattering about her day at school. The scene would have been unimaginable a year ago, but now it felt as natural as breathing. "Mrs. Henderson in chemistry class says I have real potential as a researcher," Katie said between bites of pancake. She wants me to apply for the summer program at the University of Colorado. William flipped another pancake, smiling at Katie's enthusiasm. That sounds like an excellent opportunity. What kind of research would you be doing? Cancer cell biology, Katie replied, her eyes lighting up. They are studying how certain compounds can make cancer cells more vulnerable to treatment. It's exactly what I want to learn about. Carol entered the kitchen, dressed for work in her new professional attire as household manager. The transformation in her appearance over the past year was remarkable, gone were the tired eyes and worried expression, replaced by confidence and contentment. Good morning, you two, Carol said, accepting a cup of coffee from William. Katie, don't forget you have your appointment with Dr. Rodriguez this afternoon. I won't forget, Katie promised. We're planning my presentation for the state science competition. David Miller appeared in the doorway, holding his tablet and wearing a serious expression. William, we need to discuss security for the foundation gala next month. The guest list has grown to over 400 people. The annual Patterson Foundation Gala had become one of Denver's most anticipated charitable events, raising funds for the scholarship program while celebrating the achievements of its recipients. 400. William raised his eyebrows. Last year we had 200. Word is spreading, David explained. We've received requests from families as far away as Grand Junction and Pueblo. The program is having a real impact across the state. Katie looked up from her homework. That's wonderful. More kids will get help with college. William studied Katie's face, seeing the genuine joy she felt at the idea of other children receiving opportunities. Her selflessness continued to amaze him, even after a year of daily observation. Katie, William said, I've been thinking about something, and I want to discuss it with you and your mother. Both Carol and Katie gave him their full attention. As you know, I don't have any children of my own, William continued carefully. My lawyers have been asking me to update my will and estate planning documents. Carol shifted uncomfortably, but Katie leaned forward with interest. I want to formally adopt you, Katie, if you and your mother are willing, William said. You would legally become my daughter, which would ensure the foundation's future and your security, regardless of what happens to me. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Katie's eyes widened, and Carol's hand flew to her mouth. Adopt me. Katie whispered. You would keep your name, of course, William said quickly. Katie Brooks Patterson has a nice ring to it, don't you think? And Carol, you would always be Katie's mother. Nothing would change in that regard. Carol's eyes filled with tears. William, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mom, Katie said softly, looking between the adults. Is already like family to us. William felt his heart skip a beat. Over the past year, Katie had indeed become like the daughter he had never had. Her presence had filled his house with laughter and purpose, and her wisdom often guided his decisions about the foundation and his business. There's something else, William continued. I want both of you to move into the main house. The apartment above the garage is fine, but it's time you had proper rooms in the family home. Katie jumped up from her chair and hugged William tightly. Does this mean you'll really be my dad? William wrapped his arms around the young girl, feeling a completeness he had never experienced before. If you'll have me. David Miller cleared his throat softly. I hate to interrupt this moment, but there's something else you should all know. I received a call this morning from the Department of Justice. William looked up, his arms still around Katie. About what? Marcus Sterling's cooperation has led to the arrest of 12 other white-collar criminals across 5 states, David explained. His information has helped recover over $50 million in stolen funds. Katie pulled back to look at William. That's good, right? It means other people got their money back. It's very good, William confirmed. It means your courage that day has helped far more people than we ever imagined. As the weeks passed, the adoption process moved forward smoothly. William's lawyers had prepared all the necessary documents, and a family court judge had scheduled the final hearing for December. Katie threw herself into preparation for the state science competition with renewed energy, working with Dr. Rodriguez to refine her research on soil contamination. Her project had evolved into a comprehensive study that could potentially be implemented in schools across Colorado. The preliminary results are remarkable, Dr. Rodriguez told William during one of Katie's mentoring sessions. She has a real gift for scientific thinking and problem-solving. William watched through the laboratory window as Katie carefully prepared soil samples for testing. Her focus and dedication reminded him of his own early days as an entrepreneur, when passion and curiosity drove every decision. The Foundation Gala, held at Denver's historic Brown Palace Hotel, exceeded all expectations. The ballroom was filled with scholarship recipients, their families, donors, and community leaders, all celebrating the program's success. Katie, wearing a stunning emerald green dress that complemented her eyes, served as the evening's keynote speaker. At 14, she commanded the room with poise that belied her age. A year and a half ago, I was just a kid worried about my mom paying the bills and wondering if I would ever get to college, Katie began, her voice clear and confident. Today, I stand before you as living proof that when people choose kindness over indifference, miracles can happen. The audience was captivated as Katie shared her story, from the terrifying moment she overheard Vincent's phone call to the joy of winning the state science competition the month before. But the most important thing I've learned is that receiving help creates a responsibility to help others, Katie continued. Each of us who has been blessed with opportunities has a duty to extend those blessings to someone else. She gestured to a group of tables where scholarship recipients sat with their families. These amazing students represent the future of Colorado. They are going to become doctors, teachers, engineers, and leaders who will make our communities better for everyone. The speech earned a standing ovation, and William felt tears streaming down his face as he watched his soon-to-be daughter inspire hundreds of people to greater generosity. James Harrison leaned over to William during the applause. "That girl is going to change the world." "She already has," William replied. The adoption hearing took place on a snowy December morning in a small family courtroom. Judge Maria Santos reviewed the documents with care, asking Katie if she understood what adoption meant and if it was what she truly wanted. "Your Honor," Katie said formally, "Mr. Patterson saved my future, but more than that, he taught me what it means to be part of a family that cares about other people. I would be honored to be his daughter." When Judge Santos pronounced the adoption final, Katie Brooks became Katie Brooks Patterson, heir to one of Colorado's largest fortunes and inheritor of a legacy of philanthropy that would shape her entire life. That evening, the Patterson family, William, Carol, Katie, and David, who had become like an uncle to Katie, celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. As they sat around the dining room table where Katie had first saved William's life, the conversation turned to plans for the future. "The foundation has been invited to expand into Wyoming and New Mexico," William said. "We could potentially help thousands more children over the next decade." Katie's eyes sparkled with excitement. "We should do it. Think of all the kids who could get chances they never thought possible." Carol smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. "You realize this means you'll spend a lot of your high school years traveling and speaking at events." "I can handle it," Katie said confidently. "Besides, every time I tell our story, someone else decides to help. That's how change happens, one person at a time." William looked around the table at his chosen family, marveling at the chain of events that had brought them together. A moment of crisis had become a catalyst for transformation, not just for them but for hundreds of families across Colorado. As snow fell softly outside the dining room windows, illuminated by the warm glow of the chandelier, William realized that Katie had been right from the very beginning. Sometimes the greatest gifts do come from the most unexpected places. 2 years after Katie's adoption, the Patterson Foundation had become a model for corporate philanthropy across the American West. The foundation's headquarters occupied an entire floor of a renovated building in downtown Denver, with Katie's framed state science competition certificate hanging prominently in the reception area. Katie, now 16 and a junior at Denver Academy, split her time between advanced placement classes and her duties as the Foundation's youth ambassador. On this particular spring morning, she stood before a conference room full of business leaders from Phoenix, presenting the Foundation's expansion proposal for Arizona. "The need is tremendous," Katie explained, clicking through slides showing statistics on educational inequality. "Arizona has over 50,000 children from working families who have the academic potential for college but lack the financial resources to pursue higher education. Richard Morrison, CEO of a large Phoenix-based manufacturing company, raised his hand. Miss Patterson, what kind of success rates are you seeing with your scholarship recipients? Katie smiled confidently. 96% of our scholars graduate from high school and 88% complete their college degrees. Compare that to the national average of 60% college completion for first-generation college students. William watched proudly from the back of the room. Katie had developed into a compelling public speaker who could navigate complex questions from skeptical business leaders while maintaining her natural warmth and authenticity. After the presentation, several Phoenix executives approached William with serious expressions of interest. By the end of the day, they had secured commitments for over $2 million in funding for the Arizona expansion. "You were brilliant in there," William told Katie as they drove back to their hotel. "I had a good teacher," Katie replied, grinning at him. "Remember when you first started taking me to board meetings? I was so nervous I could barely speak." William chuckled. "Now board members take notes when you talk." Their relationship had deepened significantly since the adoption. Katie called him Dad now, without hesitation or awkwardness, and William had embraced fatherhood with an intensity that surprised even him. Carol, who had married David Miller in a beautiful ceremony at the Patterson house the previous year, had also been integral to the foundation's growth. Her organizational skills and natural empathy made her an excellent coordinator for the family support services the foundation provided. The foundation's approach was comprehensive, offering not just financial assistance but mentoring, tutoring, and emotional support for both students and their families. Katie had insisted on this holistic approach after observing that academic success required more than just money. Some of the kids need help learning how to navigate college applications, Katie had explained to the board. Others need someone to believe in them when their own families don't understand their dreams. The results spoke for themselves. The foundation now supported 312 students across Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico, with plans to add Arizona and Utah in the coming year. Marcus Sterling had been released from prison 6 months earlier, having served 8 years of his 10-year sentence for good behavior and continued cooperation with federal investigations. William had not sought contact with his former partner, but he occasionally wondered if Marcus had learned anything from his experience. Vincent Garcia, meanwhile, had become an unexpected success story. After completing his sentence in probation, he had enrolled in culinary school and was now working as a sous chef at one of Denver's most respected restaurants. He sent a Christmas card to the Patterson family each year, updating them on his mother's continued good health and expressing gratitude for their forgiveness. Katie's academic achievements had been equally impressive. She maintained a perfect GPA while conducting independent research on pediatric cancer treatment protocols. Her work had caught the attention of several prestigious universities, and she had already received early admission offers from Stanford, Harvard, and Johns Hopkins. "I keep thinking about that first day," Katie said as they walked through the airport, heading home to Denver. "When I burst into your dining room and knocked that food off your plate." "Best meal I never ate," William replied. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come home early from school that day?" William considered the question seriously. "I try not to think about it. But I do know that everything good in my life now traces back to your courage in that moment." They boarded their flight and settled into their seats. Katie pulled out her laptop to work on a college application essay, while William reviewed foundation documents. "Dad," Katie said after a few minutes, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "After college and medical school, I want to come back and run the foundation full-time. I mean, if you think I'd be good at it." William felt his heart swell with pride and emotion. "Katie, there's nothing I would want more. But you should know that running the foundation would be just as demanding as practicing medicine." "I know," Katie said. "But I think this is what I'm meant to do. Help kids like I was helped. Make sure other families get the chances we got." As their plane lifted off from Phoenix, William looked down at the sprawling city below and thought about all the children whose lives might be changed by the foundation's expansion. Each scholarship recipient had their own story of struggle and potential, their own family that would be transformed by unexpected kindness. The foundation's success had inspired similar programs across the country. William received regular inquiries from other philanthropists wanting to replicate their model, and Katie had been invited to speak at conferences on youth development and educational equity. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition had come from an unexpected source. The previous month, a letter had arrived at the foundation offices from a former scholarship recipient named Jessica Martinez, who was now completing her residency in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dear Mr. Patterson and Katie, the letter began, "You probably don't remember me, but I was one of the first students your foundation supported 5 years ago. My mother worked as a janitor at an office building downtown, and we could never have afforded college without your help." William watched proudly from the back of the room. Katie had developed into a compelling public speaker who could navigate complex questions from skeptical business leaders while maintaining her natural warmth and authenticity. After the presentation, several Phoenix executives approached William with serious expressions of interest. By the end of the day, they had secured commitments for over $2 million in funding for the Arizona expansion. "You were brilliant in there," William told Katie as they drove back to their hotel. "I had a good teacher," Katie replied, grinning at him. "Remember when you first started taking me to board meetings? I was so nervous I could barely speak." William chuckled. "Now board members take notes when you talk." Their relationship had deepened significantly since the adoption. Katie called him Dad now, without hesitation or awkwardness, and William had embraced fatherhood with an intensity that surprised even him. Carol, who had married David Miller in a beautiful ceremony at the Patterson house the previous year, had also been integral to the foundation's growth. Her organizational skills and natural empathy made her an excellent coordinator for the family support services the foundation provided. The foundation's approach was comprehensive, offering not just financial assistance but mentoring, tutoring, and emotional support for both students and their families. Katie had insisted on this holistic approach after observing that academic success required more than just money. "Some of the kids need help learning how to navigate college applications," Katie had explained to the board. "Others need someone to believe in them when their own families don't understand their dreams." The results spoke for themselves. The foundation now supported 312 students across Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico, with plans to add Arizona and Utah in the coming year. Marcus Sterling had been released from prison 6 months earlier, having served 8 years of his 10-year sentence for good behavior and continued cooperation with federal investigations. William had not sought contact with his former partner, but he occasionally wondered if Marcus had learned anything from his experience. Vincent Garcia, meanwhile, had become an unexpected success story. After completing his sentence and probation, he had enrolled in culinary school and was now working as a sous chef at one of Denver's most respected restaurants. He sent a Christmas card to the Patterson family each year, updating them on his mother's continued good health and expressing gratitude for their forgiveness. Katie's academic achievements had been equally impressive. She maintained a perfect GPA while conducting independent research on pediatric cancer treatment protocols. Her work had caught the attention of several prestigious universities, and she had already received early admission offers from Stanford, Harvard, and Johns Hopkins. "I keep thinking about that first day," Katie said as they walked through the airport, heading home to Denver. "When I burst into your dining room and knocked that food off your plate." "Best meal I never ate," William replied. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come home early from school that day?" William considered the question seriously. "I try not to think about it. But I do know that everything good in my life now traces back to your courage in that moment." They boarded their flight and settled into their seats. Katie pulled out her laptop to work on a college application essay, while William reviewed foundation documents. "Dad," Katie said after a few minutes, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "After college and medical school, I want to come back and run the foundation full-time. I mean, if you think I'd be good at it." William felt his heart swell with pride and emotion. "Katie, there's nothing I would want more. But you should know that running the foundation would be just as demanding as practicing medicine." "I know," Katie said. "But I think this is what I'm meant to do. Help kids like I was helped. Make sure other families get the chances we got." As their plane lifted off from Phoenix, William looked down at the sprawling city below and thought about all the children whose lives might be changed by the foundation's expansion. Each scholarship recipient had their own story of struggle and potential, their own family that would be transformed by unexpected kindness. The foundation's success had inspired similar programs across the country. William received regular inquiries from other philanthropists wanting to replicate their model, and Katie had been invited to speak at conferences on youth development and educational equity. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition had come from an unexpected source. The previous month, a letter had arrived at the foundation offices from a former scholarship recipient named Jessica Martinez, who was now completing her residency in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dear Mr. Patterson and Katie, the letter began, "You probably don't remember me, but I was one of the first students your foundation supported 5 years ago. My mother worked as a janitor at an office building downtown, and we could never have afforded college without your help. I wanted you to know that I just accepted a position at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, where I'll be working on new treatments for childhood leukemia. Every day when I put on my doctor's coat, I remember that this opportunity exists because a 13-year-old girl had the courage to save a stranger's life. I've started a scholarship fund at my medical school for students from working-class families. It's small now, but I hope it will grow. I learned from your example that those who receive help have a responsibility to help others. Thank you for showing me what's possible when people choose kindness over indifference." Katie had cried when she first read the letter, realizing that her moment of courage years ago was still creating ripples of positive change in the world. When we choose to help others, we never know how far that kindness will travel or how many lives it will touch. What acts of generosity have you witnessed that created lasting change? Share your experiences in the comments and subscribe to follow more stories of hope and transformation. The controversy began with a newspaper article in the Denver Post titled "The Katie Brooks Patterson Effect: Authentic Philanthropy or Elaborate Tax Scheme." Written by investigative journalist Mark Thompson, the piece questioned William's motives for the foundation and suggested that the adoption of Katie was primarily a financial maneuver. Katie read the article on her phone during lunch at Denver Academy, her face growing increasingly flushed as she absorbed Thompson's implications. "Listen to this," she said to her friend Sarah Chen, reading aloud from the article. "Patterson's adoption of the Maid's daughter conveniently positions him to transfer his wealth without standard inheritance taxes, while creating a public relations narrative that benefits his business interests." Sarah, who had become Katie's closest friend since starting at Denver Academy, looked outraged. "That's horrible. Anyone who knows you and your dad can see how genuine your relationship is." But the article's impact spread quickly. By the end of the school day, Katie's classmates were buzzing with whispers and pointed glances. Some students, particularly those from wealthy families who felt guilty about their own lack of charitable involvement, seemed eager to believe the worst about the Patterson family. When Katie arrived home that afternoon, she found William in his study on the phone with the foundation's legal team, his face grave with concern. "I don't care what it costs," William was saying. "I want a complete independent audit of every foundation transaction for the past 5 years. If someone wants to question our motives, they can examine every dollar." Katie waited until he finished the call before entering the study. "Dad, I saw the article." William looked up at his daughter, seeing the hurt in her eyes despite her attempts to appear strong. "I'm sorry, Katie. This kind of scrutiny comes with public philanthropy, but I never wanted it to affect you personally." "Is any of it true?" Katie asked quietly. "I mean, about the taxes and the business benefits." William set down his papers and gave Katie his full attention. "The foundation does provide some tax advantages. That's true of any legitimate charity. And the positive publicity has probably helped my business reputation. But Katie, you have to know that none of that was why I adopted you or started the foundation." Katie nodded, but William could see that the journalist's accusations had planted seeds of doubt. After 4 years as father and daughter, this was their first real crisis of trust. The controversy intensified over the following days. A local television station picked up the story, interviewing several unnamed sources who claimed to have inside knowledge of the foundation's operations. Social media buzzed with debates about the Patterson family's authenticity. Carol and David found themselves defending the family's integrity to friends and neighbors. Some people were supportive, but others seemed to relish the suggestion that the heartwarming story they had celebrated was somehow fraudulent. It's like they want the fairy tale to be fake, Carol said to William one evening as they sat in the living room. As if authentic kindness is too good to believe. The stress was taking its toll on all of them. Katie's grades slipped slightly as she struggled to concentrate on her studies while navigating whispers and questions at school. William found himself second-guessing decisions about foundation operations, worried that every choice would be scrutinized for hidden motives. But support came from unexpected quarters. James Harrison published an op-ed in the Denver Post defending the Pattison Foundation and sharing his own experiences with employee philanthropy. Other business leaders who had worked with William came forward to vouch for his character. The strongest defense, however, came from the scholarship recipients themselves. Jessica Martinez, the former recipient who was now a pediatric oncology resident, organized a letter-writing campaign in which over 100 scholarship recipients and their families shared their stories of how the foundation had changed their lives. "I know Mr. Pattison and Katie personally," wrote Maria Santos, whose daughter had received a foundation scholarship to study engineering. "I have watched them at family dinners, seen how they interact when no cameras are around, witnessed their genuine love for each other. Anyone who questions the authenticity of their relationship has never seen them together." Vincent Garcia, despite his complicated history with the family, also spoke up. He gave an interview to the same television station that had run the critical story, sharing his perspective on William's character. "William Pattison could have had me prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law," Vincent said. "Instead, he paid for my mother's cancer treatment and helped me rebuild my life. That's not the behavior of a man whose philanthropy is just for show." The independent audit results, released 6 weeks after the controversy began, vindicated the foundation completely. Not only were all financial transactions proper and legal, but the audit revealed that William had been personally covering many administrative costs that could have legitimately been charged to the foundation. The Pattison Foundation operates with a level of financial transparency and efficiency that exceeds industry standards, the audit report concluded. The family's commitment to the foundation's mission appears genuine and long-term. Mark Thompson, the journalist who had written the original article, published a follow-up piece acknowledging the audit results, but maintaining that his questions about wealthy philanthropy remained valid in general terms. Katie read his response with a mixture of relief and lingering hurt. Why did he write the first article if he didn't have proof of anything wrong? William considered how to answer his daughter's question honestly. Sometimes people become cynical about others' motives because they can't imagine acting purely out of kindness themselves. It's easier to believe that everyone has hidden agendas than to accept that some people genuinely want to help. The experience had been painful, but ultimately strengthening for the family. They had weathered their first public crisis together, and their bond had emerged even deeper than before. At school, Katie found that the controversy had actually increased respect for her among most students. Her grace under pressure and refusal to respond with anger or defensiveness had impressed her classmates and teachers alike. "You handled that whole situation with real maturity," her friend Sarah observed. "I would have been furious if someone had written those things about my family." "I was furious at first," Katie admitted. "But Dad taught me that responding with anger usually just makes things worse. The truth has a way of coming out if you give it time." The foundation's work continued to expand despite the temporary setback. The Arizona program launched successfully, and inquiries about replicating the model came in from as far away as North Carolina and Oregon. Katie's college application essays had been strengthened by her reflection on the controversy. She wrote with new depth about the responsibilities that come with privilege and the importance of maintaining integrity in the face of criticism. "Adversity reveals character," she wrote in her essay for Stanford University. "The past few months taught me that when you choose to help others publicly, you must be prepared to have your motives questioned. But the answer to cynicism isn't to stop helping. It's to help so consistently and authentically that doubt becomes impossible to sustain." As her senior year of high school began, Katie felt more confident than ever about her path forward. The controversy had been difficult, but it had also confirmed her commitment to the foundation's work and her understanding of the challenges she would face as a public figure. "Do you ever regret getting involved in all this?" William asked Katie one evening as they worked together in his study, reviewing scholarship applications for the coming year. Katie looked up from the essay she was reading, written by a 17-year-old whose mother worked as a hotel housekeeper in Phoenix. The young man wanted to study environmental engineering and develop clean water systems for underserved communities. Never, Katie said firmly. Not even during the worst of the controversy. What we do matters too much to let other people's suspicions stop us. William smiled at his daughter's certainty. I'm proud of you, Katie. Not just for how you handled the criticism, but for how you've grown into the kind of person who can't be shaken from doing what's right. As autumn settled over Denver, the Patterson family faced the future with renewed purpose. The challenges had been real, but they had emerged stronger and more committed than ever to their mission of transforming lives through unexpected kindness. The morning of Carol and David's wedding dawned crisp and clear, with golden autumn sunlight streaming through the tall windows of the Patterson mansion. Katie stood in her mother's room, carefully fastening the buttons on Carol's ivory silk dress while fighting back tears of joy. "Mom, you look absolutely beautiful," Katie said, stepping back to admire her mother's transformation. Carol had always been attractive, but today she seemed to glow with happiness and contentment. Carol turned to look at herself in the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the elegant woman staring back at her. "I still can't believe this is really happening." "Believe it," Katie said, adjusting her mother's pearl necklace. "You deserve all this happiness and more." The wedding had been planned as an intimate ceremony for 50 guests, but word had spread through Denver's community of foundation families, and the guest list had grown to nearly 200 people. William had offered to move the ceremony to a larger venue, but Carol had insisted on having it at the house where she had worked for so many years and where her life had been transformed. Downstairs, William was helping David with his tie in the library that had become the family's informal meeting room. "Nervous?" William asked, noticing David's slightly shaking hands. "Terrified," David admitted with a laugh. "Not about marrying Carol, but about speaking in front of all these people." "Just speak from the heart," William advised. "That's what you've been doing with Carol for the past 3 years." David nodded, taking a deep breath. "William, I want you to know how much it means to me that you're officiating the ceremony. When Carol suggested it, I couldn't think of anyone more appropriate." William had gotten ordained online specifically to perform the ceremony, viewing it as one of the greatest honors of his life. The man who had once eaten alone in his vast dining room was now performing the wedding of 2 of the people he cared about most in the world. The backyard had been transformed into a wedding wonderland, with white chairs arranged in rows facing a flower-covered arbor. The autumn garden provided a stunning backdrop, with maple trees in brilliant shades of red and gold surrounding the ceremony space. As guests began to arrive, Katie greeted them in her role as maid of honor. She wore a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes, and her hair was styled in an elegant updo that made her look older than her 17 years. "Katie," called Maria Santos, whose daughter Rosa was now a sophomore at Colorado State University studying engineering. "You look so grown up and beautiful." The gathering represented a remarkable cross-section of Denver society. Scholarship recipients and their families mingled with business leaders and philanthropists, all united by their connection to the Patterson Foundation's mission. James Harrison approached William as the ceremony was about to begin. "This is really something special, William. Look around at all these people whose lives have been touched by your family's kindness." William surveyed the crowd, seeing faces that represented hundreds of transformed lives. Former scholarship recipients who were now college graduates and young professionals sat next to current recipients and their families. Board members and donors chatted with foundation staff and community leaders. But perhaps the most meaningful guest was Vincent Garcia, who had arrived early and was sitting quietly in the back row. William had personally invited him, believing that redemption and forgiveness were as important to celebrate as love and new beginnings. As the string quartet began to play, the guests took their seats. David took his position at the altar, with William beside him. Katie walked down the aisle first, carrying a bouquet of white roses and smiling at the assembled guests. Then Carol appeared at the back of the garden, radiant in her ivory dress and carrying a bouquet of autumn flowers. She had chosen to walk alone, but halfway down the aisle, she paused and extended her hand to Katie, who left her position at the altar to accompany her mother for the final steps. The gesture brought tears to many eyes, symbolizing the journey this small family had taken from struggle to security, from isolation to belonging. William's voice was strong and clear as he began the ceremony. "We are gathered today to celebrate the union of Carol Brooks and David Miller, two people who have found in each other a love that completes and strengthens them both." He spoke about the nature of love and commitment, drawing on his observations of Carol and David's relationship over the past 3 years. Their love had grown slowly and steadily, built on mutual respect, shared values, and a commitment to supporting each other's dreams. When it came time for vows, David spoke first, his voice steady despite his earlier nervousness. "Carol, when I first met you 4 years ago, I was immediately struck by your strength and grace. You were raising an incredible daughter, managing a demanding job, and facing financial challenges that would have broken a lesser person, but you did it all with dignity and kindness." He paused, looking out at the assembled guests before continuing. "You taught me that true strength comes not from power or position, but from the courage to keep going when life is difficult. You showed me that the most important things in life aren't things at all, but the relationships we build and the love we share." Carol's vows were equally moving. "David, you came into my life at a time when I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be cherished and protected. You loved not just me, but Katie as well, treating her like the daughter you never had. You've shown us both what it means to be part of a family where everyone is valued and supported." When William pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was tender and full of promise. The assembled guests erupted in applause, many wiping away tears of joy. The reception was held in a large tent erected on the mansion's side lawn, with round tables decorated in autumn colors and soft lighting that created a warm, intimate atmosphere. Katie served as master of ceremonies, introducing speakers with poise and humor that delighted the guests. "I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate my mom and David," Katie began, standing at the microphone with confidence. 4 years ago, when I saved William Patterson's life, I never imagined it would lead to all this." The crowd chuckled, remembering the dramatic beginning of their story. "But looking back, I realized that the most important thing that happened that day wasn't that I saved one man's life," Katie continued. "It was that we all learned what becomes possible when people choose to help each other instead of turning away." She gestured around the tent, where scholarship recipients sat at tables with donors, where former enemies like Vincent Garcia shared conversations with Foundation board members, where Maid's daughter was preparing to attend Stanford University in the fall. "My mom used to tell me that family isn't just about blood relations," Katie said. "It's about the people who show up for you, who believe in you, who celebrate your successes and support you through your struggles." Looking around this tent tonight, I see the largest, most diverse, most loving family anyone could ask for. The applause was thunderous, but Katie held up her hand to continue. "There's one more thing I want to share," she said, her voice growing more serious. "In a few months, I'll be leaving for college. And after that, medical school. But I want everyone here to know that my future is built on the foundation of love and support that all of you have provided." She looked directly at William, who was sitting at the head table with tears in his eyes. "Dad, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours that day. You gave me opportunities one never could have imagined, but more importantly, you taught me that having opportunities creates an obligation to help others. Every success I achieve, every life I'm able to help as a doctor, will be a result of the kindness you showed to a scared little girl who just wanted to do the right thing." As Katie concluded her speech, William stood and applauded along with everyone else, his heart full of pride and love for the remarkable young woman his daughter had become. The dancing continued late into the evening, with multiple generations celebrating together under the stars. Vincent Garcia approached William during one of the slower songs, extending his hand in friendship. "Thank you for inviting me," Vincent said quietly. "I know it couldn't have been an easy decision." "Redemption and new beginnings are what tonight is all about," William replied, shaking Vincent's hand. "You've earned your place here." As the evening wound down and guests began to say their goodbyes, Katie found herself standing with William on the terrace overlooking the garden where her mother had just been married. "It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?" William said, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "The best journey imaginable," Katie replied. "And it's just the beginning." As they watched the last guest departing into the crisp autumn night, both father and daughter felt a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected path that had brought them to this moment of perfect contentment and boundless hope for the future. 5 years later, Katie Brooks Patterson stood at the podium in Stanford University's Memorial Auditorium, delivering her valedictorian address to the class of 2029. At 22, she had grown into a poised and articulate young woman, her green eyes sparkling with intelligence and compassion. "Fellow graduates," Katie began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, "we stand today at the threshold of our futures, carrying with us not just knowledge, but a responsibility to use that knowledge in service of others." In the audience, William Patterson watched with undisguised pride, his heart swelling as he listened to his daughter speak. At 73, he moved more slowly than he once had, but his mind remained sharp and his commitment to the Foundation's work unwavering. "I want to tell you about a moment that changed my life," Katie continued, "and in doing so, changed the lives of thousands of other people as well." She told the story of that dramatic day 9 years ago, when a 13-year-old girl burst into a billionaire's dining room and saved his life, setting in motion a chain of events that had transformed communities across the American West. "The lesson I learned that day wasn't about courage, though courage was required," Katie explained. "It was about connection. In that moment of crisis, I saw not a wealthy stranger, but a human being in danger. That simple recognition of our shared humanity opened the door to everything that followed." Carol and David Miller, now married for 6 years and serving as the Foundation's operational directors, sat in the front row with tears in their eyes. Carol had never imagined, during those difficult years as a single mother, that she would one day watch her daughter graduate as valedictorian from one of the world's most prestigious universities. The Patterson Foundation has now provided educational opportunities to over 1,500 students across 7 states, Katie continued. "But the real measure of our success isn't in the numbers. It's in the pediatric nurse who grew up in a trailer park and now saves children's lives every day. It's in the environmental engineer whose parents cleaned office buildings at night so he could study, and who now develops clean water systems for underserved communities. It's in the teacher whose grandmother was a migrant worker, and who now inspires the next generation of students to believe in their own potential." In the audience, many of those former scholarship recipients sat listening, now successful professionals who continued to support the Foundation's work in their own communities. William's health had begun declining the previous year, forcing him to step back from day-to-day operations. The doctors called it a mild heart condition, manageable with medication and reduced stress, but it served as a reminder that his time as the Foundation's leader would not be unlimited. Katie had already been accepted to Harvard Medical School, where she would begin her studies in pediatric oncology in the fall. But she had also been elected to the Foundation's board of directors and would assume the role of president upon William's retirement. "As we leave Stanford today," Katie said, building to her conclusion, "I challenge each of you to remember that success is not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we give back. Every one of us has been blessed with talents, opportunities, and advantages that others lack. Our obligation is not to hoard these blessings, but to use them as bridges to lift others up." The applause was thunderous, but Katie held up her hand for one final thought. 9 years ago, a moment of unexpected kindness changed my life forever. Today, I challenge all of us to create those moments for others. You never know which small act of compassion might transform not just one life, but hundreds of lives, for generations to come. As Katie left the podium, William felt a profound sense of completion. The scared, desperate girl who had saved his life had grown into a woman capable of leading one of the nation's most successful philanthropic organizations. After the ceremony, the Patterson family gathered for a quiet dinner at William's hotel suite. The group now included Carol and David's twin daughters, born 2 years earlier and named Hope and Faith at Katie's suggestion. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," William told Katie as they sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the Stanford campus. "Your mother would be amazed to see the woman you've become." Katie took his hand, noticing how much more fragile it felt than it once had. "Dad, are you sure you're ready to retire? The Foundation still needs your leadership." William smiled at his daughter's concern. "The Foundation needs fresh leadership, and there's no one I trust more than you to provide it. Besides, I'll still be around to offer advice when you want it." The transition had been planned for months. Katie would take a gap year before starting medical school to focus on expanding the foundation's work into new regions. The board had approved an ambitious 5-year plan to establish programs in 15 additional states, potentially helping over 5,000 students. "There's something I want to give you," William said, reaching into his jacket pocket and withdrawing a small velvet box. Katie opened it to find a simple gold necklace with a pendant in the shape of a key. "It's beautiful, Dad." "The key represents opportunity," William explained. "When I first met you, you unlocked something in me that I didn't even know was there. The capacity for love, for purpose, for making a real difference in the world." Katie fastened the necklace around her neck, feeling the weight of both the gift and the responsibility it represented. "I have something for you too," Katie said, handing William a leather-bound journal. "I've been working on this for the past year." William opened the journal to find page after page of handwritten entries documenting the stories of Foundation Scholarship recipients. Each entry included the student's background, their academic achievements, and their current professional accomplishments. "This is incredible, Katie," William said, reading through several entries. "You've created a permanent record of the Foundation's impact. Every single one of these students exists because of your generosity," Katie said. "When you're feeling tired or discouraged, I want you to read these stories and remember how many lives you've changed." As the summer progressed, Katie threw herself into her new role with characteristic determination and vision. She traveled extensively, meeting with potential donors, visiting existing scholarship recipients, and identifying communities where the foundation could make the greatest impact. The work was demanding, but Katie found it deeply fulfilling. Each scholarship recipient she met reminded her of her younger self, full of potential but lacking opportunity. In August, Vincent Garcia requested a meeting with Katie. Now 38 and the head chef at one of Denver's most celebrated restaurants, he had a proposal. "I want to start a culinary scholarship program," Vincent explained as they sat in his restaurant after hours. "There are talented kids from working-class families who could have great careers in the food industry if they could afford culinary school." Katie was intrigued. How would it work? "Partner with the existing foundation structure, but focus specifically on hospitality and culinary education," Vincent said. "I've been talking to other chefs and restaurant owners. We're willing to provide internships and job placement assistance." "Vincent, that's a brilliant idea," Katie said. "Let's set up a meeting with the full board." The culinary scholarship program was approved unanimously and launched the following spring. Vincent's leadership of the initiative was particularly meaningful, representing a complete transformation from his lowest moment to a position of community leadership. As autumn arrived and Katie prepared to finally begin medical school, she reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this point. The scared 13-year-old who had saved a stranger's life had evolved into a confident young woman ready to take on the challenges of medical training while leading a major philanthropic organization. William's health had stabilized, allowing him to enjoy his partial retirement while staying involved in foundation activities that energized him most. He spent much of his time mentoring young entrepreneurs and advising other philanthropists on effective giving strategies.